Well, South Africa is celebrating 30 years of democracy and also commemorating International Workers' Day today. The rights of workers and the role played by labour unions have come under the spotlight as workers continue to fight for better wages and conducive working environments. Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi is now joining us for that conversation. Minister, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's start off from where Naledi has just ended her conversation with the conversation that she's just ended now with Blessing Ramuba, who is an independent candidate. And he's making reference to the new initiative that was launched a couple of weeks ago. And this is in relation to try and create jobs. Minister, from your point of view, why hasn't government done this already?
Not sure what you are talking about when you say why hasn't government done this thing. The program.
Okay, you can go ahead.
You hear me?
Yes, you can go ahead, Minister.
The program which we have announced, it's not a new program. It's a program which was started in 2008 when we faced what we call the financial crisis, which started also in the United States, which impacted on a number of countries, including the areas of employment, when we came up with the different schemes. But in 2016, we started with our scheme under the UIF Labour, what we call it the LAB, the Labour program, which is about the training of the young people for employability. But also part of that program, we have been dealing with what we call the interventions whenever there are retrenchments in the different companies. And we've been able, through that particular process, to save a number of jobs. And this program has been continuing, but unfortunately not at a level where it's supposed to be. In order to deal with the mass unemployment and the mass retrenchments. But we have upped that particular program. And I think in this period of 2019 to 2023, we saved a number of jobs in the different companies. As he's speaking now, I'm not sure whether he's aware that there are engagements between Department of Employment and Labour, Department of Minerals and Energy, and the various mining houses who have been talking about the retrenchments. There are serious discussions and say, how are we going to intervene faced with that particular crisis? Yeah,
because earlier on also we played a package from Mpumalanga by one of our reporters and people speaking about the decision, of course, to decommission the Komati power station and how that has led to job losses. But what we notice from that as well is that the job losses are not only in the mining industry itself, but the ripple effect that it has had around the communities. For instance, one of the people that Mweli spoke to speaks about the lodging industry. Some people used to lodge there from Eskom as well as the mining sector.
Well, there are a number of industries which are affected because of a number of reasons. You know that one of the reasons why, for instance, the energy sector is affected, it's because of this a global movement towards what is called clean energy, when we're talking about alternative energy sources. And one of the things which we've said we have to do, you have to talk about the mass retraining of the workers in those particular areas. And there's something which you cannot be able to run away from, as much as you have to move gradually in terms of that particular movement. But you must be able to retrain your workers. That's why we are releasing the resources. And we're talking about massifying the skills development and in order for the young workers, those whom can be able to train, you can be able to say, massify them in skills in the different areas so that they can be able to be redeployed. But also, you must talk about how do you protect them. There have been a number of what is known as Section 189 retrenchments. Even there, we've been able to save a number of the jobs through what we call the temporary employee relief scheme, where we engage with the employers. We're able to say, whilst we are still restructuring, how do we ensure that we are able to keep the workers afloat until we have done your restructuring, but we also help in that restructuring process?
Yeah, but isn't it true, Minister, excuse me, that South Africa also had a choice in relation to the just energy transition whether or not it was ready to implement it and whether or not it will be able to ensure that the people who would be losing their jobs are actually retrained immediately, because the livelihood question is an immediate, it's an immediate and urgent issue that needs to be dealt with. So, for instance, now you decommission a power station. You say we're going to reskill these people. Some of them have still not had an income since the decommissioning had taken place. What about the urgent need for an income right now?
I think what is key is for the different departments to coordinate. You would remember that this is a process which was led by another department, and but also minerals and energy. We've been able to say, in terms of dealing with the issue of alternative energy or moving from fossil fuel, we need to ensure that it's gradualistic. We don't need a big bang approach where you just leave the people who have not been trained, who are going to be destitute. So it's something which we're looking at. We're engaging with the different departments on how we have to save those workers, retrain them, and be able to redirect them into the other areas. Well, it's unfortunate that it has already happened, but I think you are right to say proper planning is going to be needed here. But remember, there's also pressure. There's pressure that we need to move. There's pressure that some of these power stations are very old. They cannot be able to operate anymore. So these are the issues which we have to consider. But it's a fact that we would need to train those workers and redirect them even before we start.
And just reflections then on the 30 years of the country's democracy and some of the policy interventions and some of the good work actually that has been done. And for instance, looking at the Labour Relations Amendment bills and acts that have come through, speak to us about some of the wins that have been experienced by the department through the intervention of government.
Well, we all know that we've had a raft of labour legislation and protections which give what we can say the Labour a real voice to protect the rights of the workers and take forward what we call our goal of decent work for all. And I think on that particular area we've done very well. If you look at the various legislations which we have from the LRA, you talk about the LRA, which gives all the basic rights for the workers, the issue of national minimum wage, the health and safety issues, a raft of these legislations we've done very well. When we're also looking at the inclusion in the workplace, like when we're talking about the issue of that the workplace must also reflect the demographics of this particular country. So on all those issues, we think that we're doing very well. We've signed, for instance, the ILO Convention on safety and the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace. We've had a number of the regulations where we're dealing with all those issues. Signing such international conventions like Convention 190 to deal with all these issues of sexual harassment at the workplace, it shows that indeed the workers are protected, and our inspections which we're having. So the whole collective bargaining system is very protected in this particular country. In fact, a number of the countries, they say they envy South Africa in terms of what we are having. However, there are still challenges where in some other industries, there's still resistance from the side of the employers in terms of fully engaging in terms of the collective bargaining and in terms of the Labour Relations Act, which we have.
Yeah, you speak about health and safety, but earlier on we were in conversation with Nxesi Nkati, who is from the National Union of Public Service and Allied Workers in the Eastern Cape, highlighting the issue and the plight of people who work in the health health sector, and how they've become targets of criminals. I just quickly want you to listen to this, Minister, because whilst the policy is in place, the other question is around the implementation of the policy to ensure that the workers are safe while executing the services that they have been contracted to execute. Just take a listen to what she had to say.
Whenever these things are happening, workers get traumatized. They need to be taken for debriefing. And also, those do not happen up until unions have to go and fight and ask, How are you expecting these staff members to continue as if everything is normal? You need to take care of their mental state. Our employer is lacking when it comes to that. Our employer is lacking a lot of things. Whenever these incidents are happening, the only thing you will see is a circular that is saying, please record whenever there is someone that is missing from work. They only care about production.
Yeah.
So to them, production is what is important.
Yeah, Minister, your reaction to that, and here we're speaking about the health department. It's not a private entity that we're speaking here. It's part of your colleagues who have to ensure that the workers are safe.
If you remember, Adrian, when the president came up with a program which was discussed at NEDLEC by all the partners, one of the issues, as much as we're talking about energy security, talking about the issue of massive infrastructure, and we're talking about manufacturing and localization. But one of the issues which was raised there was the issue of crime and corruption. A crime indeed is a serious threat in our country. And as a result, there are a number of initiatives which have been started or which are led by the president, working with the security cluster, working with the private industry in terms of dealing with this issue. And we've accepted that there's a big challenge, but it doesn't just affect the workplace. Or it doesn't just affect the schools. It affects our communities. It affects the schools. It affects the shops and so on. So what is happening is it's a whole society issue which we have to deal with, the issue of crime, which means we have to talk about how do we strengthen security in those particular places which tend to be targeted. Not that security is not there. Security is there, but the problem becomes when you have these gangs who are heavily armed, sometimes even more than the police. That's the problem we're dealing with. It's a societal issue which we have to deal with. We can have the basics in terms of security, but I think it must be a societal issue and which everybody must be able to be concerned about. Indeed, we have to increase our security in order to deal with some of these issues, but can we be able to put more security than the personnel which we need in those institutions where people are working? I think that's another issue. That's why this matter must be discussed by the whole society.
Okay, Minister, just a quick one. So we went to the streets to go and ask some people any questions that they have for politicians. Just take a listen to what this individual has to say.
Dzangano ine kuchimbira ngalo ndi ANC ngori liri itela 350 zvino lerengedzera mari chine rekushota ni mushumo ndio nene kokonda rekonyanga mushumo bo Ramaphosa avaritele mushumo.
Well, so basically the minister is saying that, of course, he welcomes the decision that was taken by government for the 350 SRD grant, but the other issue is in relation to jobs, that he wants a job. And also, if you look at what's currently happening in the platinum sector, with around 8,000 jobs set to be lost, your response to that?
Adrian, you must accept that when you're talking about mining, in terms of what is going there, the crisis which they are facing, the nature of mining, when it comes to the prices of the minerals, it's cyclical. Sometimes they are up. There's very good profits in the mining. There's sometimes which they are low. And I think the mining companies, they must be able to manage that. There will be times when they will think of cutting down their workers. But what happens during the times when they are making big, huge profits? Do they take those profits and just give them to their shareholders and to their CEOs and so on, which is wrong? Why don't they prepare that when the mining is down at a particular time, because they know that it's ups and down? Why are they not preparing for that? That's part of the issue which we have to deal in. And those are the discussions which we're having with the mining companies. But also, you know that we have launched this labor activation program, which we call it LAB. And we've put aside 23 billion where we're training our young people for employability. But we're also using this particular money. We're also using this particular money to save the jobs, and it's coming from the unemployment insurance fund, where we're having this temporary employer-employee relief scheme. And we've saved a number of jobs whenever there are these particular retrenchments. But some of the retrenchments where we cannot be able to save them, we have to retrain those people. Because if the companies, some of them are just closing and there's nothing which can be done, you cannot be able to do that. You just have to say, how do you help those workers? How do you retrain them so that they are taking some? So in terms of our own program now, which we have set, is Labour Activation Program. It's a program which we targeting 2 million jobs over the next 3 years, but that has to be increased because you're talking about more than 7 million people who are unemployed. So the issue of jobs is very, very critical. Whilst jobs will come from what the president's program, they will come from what we have said. If we able to deal with the energy security, a lot of companies will be saved. If we're able to deal with massive, infrastructure development, if we're able to also deal with localization and manufacturing, but also public employment programs. And this program, we're doing it together with small business development, because some of the people have to be trained for enterprise development to have their own businesses. How do we formalize the informal economy and help those people and support them? Those are the jobs which they are going to be able to get. So we're working also with higher education, where we must pool the funds together and have one pool so that we can be able to have an impact. And we're coordinating with the different departments horizontally and coordinating with the different levels of government, the provinces and the municipalities, so that we can be able to have that integration, that collaboration and coordination. Then we can have a bigger impact.
Thank you so much for your time. That's the Labour and Employment Minister, Thulas Nxesi. Really appreciate your time, Minister.